Hi there, Duke fans. Welcome to episode 637 of the DBR, the Duke Basketball Roundup. Jason Evans here for your listening enjoyment, as I always am. I'm joined by my partner in crime, Donald Wine. Donald, it is Tuesday afternoon, 2 o'clock on the button. The Cooper Flagg buzz will not stop, will it?
I mean, is it buzz at this point? It seems like a air siren. Like, everybody come look at this. It's amazing what we've heard coming out of the USA basketball camp.
Yeah, we're going to have much more on that throughout this episode. But first, we're welcoming in a special guest. We want to talk a little bit about some of the Blue Devils who've been playing at various, like, I guess you'd call them all-star camp kind of thingies, skills camps, development. Really, a lot of it is tryouts for NBA guys for the future. We are joined from Draft Express by Jon Chepkevich. Jon, you are the director of scouting for Draft Express. A really, really cool job. Do me a favor, man. Tell me what exactly that entails, other than just watching a ton. Do you watch a ton of tape? You watch a ton of live stuff, probably, right?
A mix of both, for sure. I find myself in the gym quite a bit, digging into film quite a bit as well, making a lot of calls for background and intel information, just trying to learn as much as possible about these prospects on their journey to the NBA. And at Draft Express, I kind of lead the charge for providing services to the NBA, college, and international teams that subscribe to our service.
And can I ask really quick, what's your background that led to this really, really cool, fun job that I wish I had?
Oh man, it's a circuitous path. We could go on for a long time and get lost in this, but it was a long road from starting out more so in a traditional career path in accounting and finance at PricewaterhouseCoopers, where we had the NBA and the NBPA as clients for the salary cap review. And then once I got my feet wet with that, I just kind of kept pushing more and more in this direction, hustling around on the side, creating my own business and finding opportunities to break my way in.
Very, very cool. All right. So the reason you are on with us today is that in recent weeks, recent days, I guess, you have gotten a chance to see Sion James, Tyrese Proctor, Kuple, and Isaiah Evans, all of them up close at the CP3 camp and the Jason Tatum camp. Donald, I'm going to go ahead and start with my boy Sion. Jon, you don't know this because you're not a regular listener. I'm the world's biggest Sion James fan. I say that I am the conductor of the Sion train and that everyone needs to get on board with me. But give me your impressions of him at the CP3 camp, because you put out some video on Twitter or X, whatever the heck it's called. Seems like he really impressed you.
Yeah, I mean, the frame, first of all, just completely stood out from the rest of the guards at this camp. I mean, I'm kind of surprised he wasn't in the wing camp instead of the guard camp, given his size and strength and everything. But you probably saw in the first clip, he was borderline getting tackled and still able to finish through that contact while being pulled to the ground.
A lot of bully ball.
Yeah, total bully ball. But I mean, he's 6'5" ish, 220 something pounds. Looks like an edge rusher or outside linebacker or something. Like, he's just absolutely stacked. I've seen him a few times at Tulane through the years and have been impressed with his multifaceted game. He can pass really well for being a guy that's built like that. He just brings a lot to the table as some sort of Swiss Army knife utility glue guy that I think Duke kind of desperately needs, a guy to fill that role as a low usage plug and play guy with a lot of experience. So he showed a lot of those virtues at this camp. I think the question would be the shooting, which, you saw him make a couple in the clips that I posted. But how reliable is the jump shot? Can he space the floor? I think he shot 38% on a career high volume from three last year, but how sticky is that and how reliable of a shooter is he? It remains to be seen.
Yeah, we noted when he committed to Duke, Donald and I spoke about it, and one of the things I said was that 38% looks great, but it looks like it might have been an outlier from where he was earlier in his career, and his free throw shooting doesn't necessarily back that up. When you were watching him at the CP3 camp, do you see a guy who looks like he's going to hit mid to upper 30s of his threes, or what's your assessment of that?
I would err more on projecting toward the mid 30s. it was pretty hit or miss. He would make a couple in a row, and then he'd have a pretty erratic, ugly miss, right? With these guys that are super bulky and muscle bound, I feel like sometimes just having all that mass has an impact on your shooting form and the fluidity of your mechanics and everything. So it all seems a little bit compact and rigid and everything like that when he's putting shots up. But that is one of the lower items in his list of tools that he brings to the table. So I don't think he's going to have to take a ton of them, but you want him to at least be respected out there.
And if you can, your job is primarily to project these guys as they move toward the NBA. I know that Sion did some workouts for some teams this year, opted to come to Duke rather than go into the draft. What do you think is his prospect of being an NBA prospect a year from now?
He's been a guy that's been on the periphery of NBA radars for a few years now, and he's gotten consistently better year over year. And I think one of the things that definitely helps him is that he's ridiculously young for his class, right? So he's played 4 years at Tulane already. He's about to be a grad transfer, and he still doesn't turn 22 until December. So, relative to a lot of these guys that are coming out after 5 years and are 24, 25 years old, he at least isn't ancient in prospect terms.
Right.
So I think that helps him a little bit, and having this big platform now at Duke this year certainly will make it easier for NBA scouts to get eyes on him. I think he's more of like a fringe prospect. Like I wouldn't expect him to be drafted, but he seems like a guy that will, at least get some consideration for like the G League Elite Camp, maybe a two-way Exhibit 10, somewhere in that realm, I would imagine.
And just really quickly looking at him at Duke next year, and obviously, I don't expect you to study the roster so much to have a great sense of this, but what do you think his role, projects in terms of minutes, responsibility? He's not going to be a high usage player.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Like, is he in the starting lineup? Is he some like super sixth man? Like, it remains to be seen. I imagine either way, he's going to play a decent amount of minutes, regardless of how that takes shape. Um, as far as usage and everything, I anticipate it being fairly low with all the mouths to feed, but I think that's fine for kind of what he is. He can kind of plug and play, be a secondary playmaker, hit the glass, do a lot of dirty work stuff. There's a lot that he can bring to the table without needing the ball all the time, and he could work his way into potentially the second round mix. I think in the ESPN 2025 NBA mock draft, the initial one that came out the day after the 2024 draft, we had him at like 44th, like right there in the mid second round. So, if he fulfills his role at Duke, he could be drafted. But it remains to be seen. We'll see how it shakes out.
Another guy that was at camp alongside Sion James was Tyrese Proctor. And again, from some of the clips that we saw, looked really good with the passing. But from what you saw, what were some of the standout things that he was able to do when he was amongst all the other guys at the camp?
Yeah, to me, one of the most notable things was it seemed like he finally was putting on a little bit of good weight and mass to his frame. Like his upper body just looked notably stronger than what I recall in the times that I've seen him in the past. So I think that was definitely an encouraging thing to see. And he's still only just turned 20 in April, and he just had a pretty mature presence about him with the ball in his hands, and just clearly knew how to play, was pretty experienced, just seemed pretty poised compared to some of the rest of the field there. So he went about his business and seemed like he was pulling everything together. And things got a little sloppy last year and didn't necessarily have the year that people were anticipating him to. But I think signs are pointing toward him being on an upward trajectory headed into his junior year.
Tyrese is going to be very important for us this year. As you know, his offense, his passing, his shooting. He also has that floater that he likes to do in the lane at times. We joked on the last podcast that he's going to learn against probably the tallest team in the country how to do that floater when he's in practice every day.
Yeah.
But the one thing that stands out about his defense. So when you're in these camps, obviously you're not necessarily you're also testing your mettle against other guys, but you also want to improve. So in your mind, what was the thing coming out of the camp that you think that he can improve on as we get towards the season?
I mean, I think the thing for him is just being able to get the whole way to the rim and finish at the rim with some consistency. He's not a terrible athlete, but he's not a great one either. He's not like the most twitchy, explosive guy getting the whole way to the cup. You were just referencing those floaters. Like it's good to have that in your arsenal, but for it to be a really heavy component of your shot diet and something you end up having to default to because you're not getting the whole way to the cup and able to explode up and finish around these rim protectors. I think that is an area that, he could stand to improve, is figuring out ways to, craftily make his way the whole way to the rim and finish among the trees.
We talked about his offense, and you talked about something he needs to improve on offense. But again, as I mentioned, his defense was,
Yeah.
Elite last year. He was one of the better defenders in the ACC. In these camps, it's not always, it's not always a great chance to showcase defense, but how did he perform on the defensive end? Was that something that stood out a little bit, or was it something that kind of got lost in the fact that these camps are really geared towards most of the time offense?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I would say that he held up fine. Like a lot of these drills that they do at these camps are like they'll have some sort of constraint-based scenario where a guy catches the ball out on the wing and has only 3 to 4 dribbles to get a shot off in a one-on-one situation, and there's a help side guy looming. So in those, I felt like he did well out on an island in space, containing guys, at least forcing contested shots. Like he fared totally fine defensively, I think.
Okay, just like we asked about Sion James, we're gonna see if you can project a little bit the draft stock as of right now of Tyrese Proctor. This is a guy who entering college was viewed as first round talent, and kind of has been hovering around that point over the last couple of years. But even, as late as a couple months ago, most people before he decided to come back to school for his junior year thought that he would probably be trending more in the high second round right now. So where do you see him right now? And again, do you see any room for improvement with his play this year?
Yeah, I think right now we have him projected at 28th overall in the initial mock draft. My kind of gut inclination is that he ends up falling into that early second round mix. Like I envision him as being basically some sort of reliable, steady backup point guard when it's all said and done in the NBA. And oftentimes you see those guys going in the early second round. That feels like that to me is where he ultimately settles, whether that ends up being this draft or the next one, however things shake out this year into next year.
All right. So in addition to the 2 guards, you also got to see some Duke wings at the Tatum camp. And I want to start with Khaman, who Duke fans, I mean, the buzz on this guy right now is really, really strong because we saw a couple scrimmage videos and other stuff coming out of Duke, and there are people who are saying he's a strong contender to be the fifth. Like Duke has a pretty good sense, I think, of 4 of the starters. A lot of people saying he could be the 5th starter. We've seen some draft buzz on him as a first rounder, as a one and done, which is something that I think a few months ago, maybe people didn't really think was in the cards. What'd you get from watching him at the Tatum camp?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not surprised that the groundswell of draft buzz that's accumulating right now is maybe catching some people off guard because he's, kind of, average framed white kid from Milwaukee. Like doesn't look like your typical one and done, like bona fide stud prospect that you see year to year, right? But like if you go dig back into all of his EYBL stuff, I mean, he was just an absolute monster. Like he was putting up 8 threes a game at a 46+% clip. Like it's pretty unheard of, I think he might have led EYBL in scoring one of the past couple years. Like every competition he plays in, he shoots the lights out and is super productive. And it was no different at this camp. Like he just got stuff done. He's like a big bodied, strong wing. Like he's not the twitchiest, doesn't have some crazy handle, but he's big. He can shoot over people. He can use his body to bump into people and create space. He can finish through contact. He just got stuff done consistently at the camp, just like he has in all other settings.
And aside from his shooting, I mean, you alluded to it a little bit, but just give me a little more. What else do you see from him that's really special? I mean, I know shooting alone can get you high on the NBA radar and can be a super, super valuable, especially on a team that's going to have Cooper Flagg drawing so much attention. But what else does he bring to the table? I've heard, you say his ball handling. I've heard his court vision, his passing is pretty strong too.
Yeah. Yeah, he can make the right reads and he can play, make, and pass. I think again in EYBL the past few years, he's averaged like 3 to 4 assists per game, pretty good assist to turnover ratio. Like he's no slouch there either. He just does it in different ways, like kind of leveraging his size to kind of see over top of people, hit cutters, like smart skips. He brought a little bit of that at the camp as well. But I think just his, strength and his sturdy frame helps him a lot in holding up defensively as well. Like it's hard for guys to displace him and move him off his spots. He gets consistently good closeouts. Like he's not a guy that you can try to, isolate and take advantage of. Like he's pretty tough and knows how to play, knows where to be, and like did a great job throughout the camp of showing that on both ends.
Well, and a guy who comes from a basketball family, I mean, like everyone with that last name is involved in basketball in some kind of way. All right, so let me get to our sort of ultimate question. Draft expert Jon Chepkevich, Khan Knuppel. Is he a one and done? Is he a first round pick?
I tend to think yes. I think that this is just going to sort of continue at Duke. Like I think he's just going to get in there and be super productive across the board, and it's going to be kind of undeniable. We saw it with. This is. I don't mean to do the white guy to white guy comparison, but we saw it with Reed Shepherd at Kentucky this last year. He just got in there and produced and exceeded expectations, and like shot the hell out of it, defended, just produced across the board, and he got picked third overall. I don't know if that is going to happen necessarily, but it's very well within reason that he could fight his way into the lottery. Like I wouldn't be stunned by that at all.
And you think that that's the prospect for him, even though we sit here entirely unsure of how big a role he's going to play? I mean, there is certainly a world where he's the 7th or 8th man, perhaps, for this Duke team, right?
Yeah. It's possible. It's possible, but I just have this feeling that he's going to get in there. You guys have heard the buzz from the practices and everything, and now it continued at this camp. I think if he just keeps doing this, they're going to have a hard time, limiting his role, and whether that means he comes off the bench for non-conference play and they eventually, push him into the starting lineup later in the year. I think NBA teams will be able to like wade through that context if it brings down his stats a little bit. If he doesn't play as much early in the season, they'll know like, hey, this guy is the truth. That just took a little bit for them to, put him in the best position to be his best self, but I think they'll get there.
And look, the 6th and 7th men for Kentucky were the top 2 draft picks from
Well,
Kentucky.
yeah, exactly.
There you go, yeah.
That's a great point. Yeah, when you're at one of these blue blood type programs, and if you're a highly productive 6th man as a freshman, like, it doesn't really get held against you. Teams will be paying attention to you.
You go as far back as the 99 team. Corey Maggette was the 6th man on that team. He was a first round draft pick in the NBA and went on to a long career. So it can happen. Yep. I want to shift gears to the other guy that was at Tatum camp, and that's Isaiah Evans. And at least, the word out of the early practices on Isaiah Evans is that really good 3-point stroke, but sometimes streaky. But we've heard that he's someone that is good enough that you can, quote, take your chances with by putting him in every single game to see what he can do. What did you see from Isaiah Evans from this? Was the shooting streaky, or was it a little bit more consistent?
So over time with him, he's been like you're alluding to, kind of streaky, a little bit of a mixed bag with his performances that I've seen over time in different settings. But the high end stuff is really high end. Like I remember being at Peach Jam about a year ago, and he went off for like 17, maybe might have been like 17 points in a row. It was unreal. He was just like hitting shots in people's faces, like guys face guarding him, like palm right in his face, just hitting shots anyways. Like he was just on a heater, right? Like he has that in him to get hot and absolutely fill it up. Like he's a very talented guy, for being like 6'6" in shoes, 6'9" plus wingspan. He's on the skinnier side. So everyone likes to make the Brandon Ingram comps because he's a skinny Duke, long-armed guy. Like aesthetically, I get it. But at this camp, I was really impressed with how competitive and fiery he was and how much pride he took in locking guys up in one-on-one in those same drills that I was referring to earlier, like the constrained 3 to 4 dribble, like island workout on the wing. Like he was competing and he was getting up in people's handle. He was making everything tough. He was blocking some shots. Like he brought it defensively, which I think is something that people have been hoping to see for a while, is some more well-roundedness beyond the scoring. And I thought he showed that there in the camp, and that was really great to see that.
You actually brought up the next question that I was going to have, because one of the things that we have learned about this new team, this 24-25 Duke basketball team, is that competitive fire is going to be one of the main themes. Jon Scheyer wants guys who are passionate, who refuse to lose, that sort of thing. You mentioned it with Isaiah Evans. What about some of these other guys that you've seen? Do they have this competitive drive, this refuse to lose mentality that Jon Scheyer is seeking?
I think they do. I mean, they maybe express it in different ways, or maybe aren't as animated about it from guy to guy. But none of them left me with any sort of impression to the contrary. Like they all seem like pretty focused guys that care about the right stuff. And Evans was the one I was trying to get a better feel for that about at this camp, and he definitely showed that in that setting, I thought. So I was encouraged by that for sure.
Now, Duke has 14 guys on the roster, 13 guys on the roster. We have 73 wings coming in next year. How do we make room for all these guys to play, especially if Cooper Flagg is also going to be one of these wing guys?
I mean, that is probably the best problem to have, is having too many wings, right? Like just be able to throw all these guys out there, and like everyone brings a little bit of a different flavor. Like sure, there are going to be a couple guys that maybe are disappointed with their role relative to what they were hoping from a minutes perspective. But I mean, I think it's a good problem to have all these interchangeable, multifaceted guys that can, play 2 through 4, right? And then, Sion James even has some like jumbo point guard tendencies. Like all these guys have like varying skill sets that I think can complement each other well. And maybe there are ebbs and flows to the rotation throughout the year to kind of figure out what works best for them. But
I'm advocating for us to play 50-minute games. I think that,
we need
other
we
teams
need the
may have
minutes.
trouble with that. Duke would love to play a 50-minute game.
Hey, why not? Let's get Stanley Borden some minutes. Let's do it.
There you go, baby. I love it.
Okay, so just like the others, we want to ask about Isaiah Evans, his draft stock at this point. Are we looking at a first grade talent now? Are we looking at maybe a first grade talent somewhere down the line? Where do you see him fall into place with regards to his NBA prospects?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like I'm not sure on that one yet. Like I think he could very well be a one and done, or it could be a 2 to 3 year guy. It sort of depends on, some of the context of what his role looks like this year, and if he's able to take some of that, defensive pride that he showed at this camp and apply it during the course of the year and be more than like a bucket getting type of guy, which I think he can, but does he go actualize it? We'll see. I think we had him in the mid-first round back in February when we did our like very initial preliminary mock draft, and now he wasn't included in this most recent one. But that's very subject to change. We'll kind of wait to get a more viable sample of him actually in college, see what it looks like, and he could very well, make his way back into the mock draft. But I'm sort of in wait and see mode with him.
I mean, I think it's got to be his weight and his frame that really hold him back at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's thin. There's no doubt about it. I think he weighed in at 180 pounds at Hoop Summit, which isn't that bad, but only a few months prior, he was 167 at USA Basketball. It's like, where does that kind of stabilize and settle in for him? I think his frame itself, like, doesn't look crazy conducive to, bulking up. Like, I think he's just naturally kind of wiry like that. So, that works for some guys. And you figure out how to, maybe make up for that with being really flexible and like using good leverage and like different ways to counteract not being like a big bulky guy. So if he can figure those things out, he'll be fine. But it is, somewhat of a concern, I would say.
All right, John, I know you didn't get to see him specifically over the past week or so, but the 2025 draft is called the Cooper Flagg draft.
Appropriately so.
Yes, appropriately so. We are already hearing about teams trashing their roster as best as possible to try and put themselves in position to tank for him. He may not be Wemby, but he's probably the top prospect, at least at this point in the cycle that we've had, other than Wemby over the past decade or so. Give me your assessment of Cooper Flagg from what you've seen so far. It's pretty darn impressive, isn't it?
I mean, he's unbelievable. I remember being at this Made Hoops Midwest Mania event in 2021, and the guy who runs the event being like, "Hey, there's this kid in 8th grade from Maine. Like, you guys really need to go see him. Like, he's kind of like the next guy." I was like, "From Maine? Like, are you serious?" Like,
that sounds like a Mad Libs when you think about it. Like,
yeah,
some kid in Maine. Yeah,
I think no one from Maine has ever been drafted or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, not that I can think of off the top of my head. The first Maine basketball player that comes to mind for me is Tom Knight, who played for Notre Dame when I was there.
The current best Maine basketball player of all time is Duncan Robinson.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
So
Cooper's already better than Duncan Robinson, I think.
The talent out of there is few and far between, but now Cooper Flagg is definitely elevating the average by quite a bit, and he's amazing. I just through the years of AAU with his basically taking their ragtag group of his friends from Maine and making them into an EYBL program and like sticking with his guys and kind of battling with these more established powerhouse programs. Like I remember at Peach Jam last year, they took down the Boozers in that Night Riders Elite team, which is like absolutely stacked with high major studs, and Flagg just carried them. I think it was good for him to get these kind of reps in AAU as like the primary on-ball high usage guy, because that's not really who he is at his core. Like what makes him special, I think, is like the defensive end. He's just one of the most amazing instinctual defenders that I've ever seen. Like he's so quick off the floor on rotations, like blocking all these shots like a madman, just flying around like I've just never seen anything like it, like, so that's who he is at his core, but he's gotten all these reps now as being the guy on the ball and is learning how to, take on that role as well. So his trajectory over the past few years has been amazing. And there's not much to, as far as picking holes in his game, other than he's not like your traditional, like, on ball creator guy at his core,
So Donald and I are going to talk about it more later on our own, but I want to get your impressions of what you saw, because the tape is out there of his play with established NBA players against the absolute best players in the NBA over the past few days. I didn't expect him to look like he belonged as much as he does. Like he's being guarded by Drew Holiday and he's scoring on like top 3 defender in the world. How is this even possible, John?
I can't say that maybe I necessarily expected it to go as good as it looks in the highlights. Like I didn't see all of the footage. I wasn't able to tune in and check it all out, but like what's been trickling out there is super impressive. And like some of it is, the two-way play, like make a defensive play, run end to end, get the tip dunk. Like those are the things that he always does and that you can expect from him all the time. But like getting these buckets, like shooting over guys and ISO, like you're alluding to, over like some of the best defenders in the world, like as a 17-year-old, it's pretty unreal. One of the best prospects to, come up out of high school in a long time. I just only have good things to say about him. You also only hear good things as far as like his work ethic, his approach, all of that is all top notch too. Like I've seen him in Montverde practices before. Like I've gone down there each of the past 2 years and seen him in that kind of closed practice setting. And he's the same way. Like he's just a hyper competitive, locked in guy.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. One of the things that we heard recently, we had a spy watching a series of scrimmages at Duke, and he said as they move guys around to different teams, the one constant was that Cooper's team always won.
Yeah.
Now, look, part of that is he's an absolute sublime basketball player who impacts the game at both ends of the floor, but another part of it is dude just doesn't know how not to win. He doesn't know how to do anything but make the players around him better. I'm guessing the NBA sees that and just salivates at it.
Oh yeah. I mean, when you can get a guy like this that just is such a floor raiser and like makes everybody around him inherently better and can cover up for teammates' mistakes with all this defensive like special ability that he has that we've been talking about, like it's just such an easy sell, like this guy comes in and immediately changes the trajectory of your franchise. It's really exciting to, have a chance at, seeing your ping pong ball come up this year for sure.
So I want to shift gears to one of the other guys who, in all likelihood could be one of the top few picks in next year's draft, and that's Khaman Maluach. Of course, he's a guy out of South Sudan. He's currently left Duke to take care of business on the Olympic team for South Sudan as they prepare for the Olympics. But the word early on, and from what everyone has seen, is that he's more of a raw talent. But what about you that you have seen? What about him that you have seen is the attribute that you think he can improve the quickest? Right? He's not going to shoot 80% from three overnight. But is there some part of his game that you think can come about really quickly with just a lot of reps?
Yeah, I mean the 3-point shooting, I think I think that'll get there to be passable. Like I've been encouraged over the past year and a half or whatever of watching him in different settings that he's pretty fearless. Like he'll let them fly. Like the NBA Academy Africa team, like he's kind of surrounded by a lot of guys that are you know kind of four or five molds, like a lot of front court guys sharing the court together, like not a ton of floor spacers. And he's been a guy that's been able to provide that for them, and he's not afraid to shoot. So like I'm not too worried about that piece. As far as like the lowest hanging fruit for improvement, I think it's really just consistency, like I think some games he'll look absolutely amazing, like be a total game record defensively, be super aggressive offensively, and just down at the G League showcase in December, like he had a couple games like that where you're like, oh my God, like this guy is nuts. But then at the NBA Academy games the previous year, he was pretty terrible, like he was so like raw and lacking polish and like running into brick walls, just like lacking feel for the game. But I think that all just comes with reps. So, him going to Duke this year, he's going to get some really meaningful reps in high leverage situations to kind of keep accumulating that, experience to build on his feel for the game on both ends. But, as a guy that's, 7'1" barefoot, like 250 pounds, 7'5" wingspan, 9'7", 9'8" standing reach, like that's pretty ridiculous, those set of tools. And he's not 18 yet either. Like there's a lot to hang his hat on, and there's still like I think a pretty high variance as to his outcomes in the NBA, but that concoction of stuff is hard to find.
Now, when we think about, you talk about his draft prospects, I think a lot of people have said that he could be one of the top few picks. You got Cooper number one, and then he can fall in that 2 to 10 range, just based on his raw skills.
Mm-hmm.
The word is that he's probably going to start at Duke at some point. We expect him to be in the starting lineup at some point during the season. Do you think it's at the start of the season, or do you think it's going to take him a couple of weeks or even a month to kind of get his feet under him with the talent that he's starting to kind of cultivate into something that's pure?
That's a good question. I mean, you guys probably would know better than I would, honestly. You guys are super, super tapped into the intricacies of those kinds of decisions, being the local Duke experts. But I don't know. I mean, I could see them bringing him along slowly. That wouldn't surprise me if they kind of ease him into it. he just needs a little bit more seasoning. But this is a guy, going back to your question earlier about the like fire and competitiveness and stuff. Like he definitely has that. Like he plays really hard. He was the like defensive player of the Basketball Without Borders camp that I saw him at in Indianapolis during All-Star weekend. He's like constantly communicating, like super energetic, like all that stuff is great to see. So I think he'll kind of win the coaching staff over by bringing that level of engagement and everything on a day-to-day basis. So if it takes him a few weeks, I think that's fine to get him his feet under him. But I think he'll figure it out.
Last question from me on Maluach. Again, the draft question. We know we didn't ask the Cooper draft question because we know where that's going to be. It's just a matter of which team. But where do you see Khaman Maluach at this point? Do you see him in the top 3, top 10, or is this someone that you peg somewhere else? Because for me, I think once he volleyball swats someone into the second deck of Cameron, he might go up in the draft boards a bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, right now we have him at 6. So he's behind Flagg, Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, Nolan Traore, and VJ Edgecombe, right? Like, then that's a very, very talented top 5. So
Hell
to
of a
be
draft,
at 6,
man.
yeah. Yeah. So for him to be at 6, that's that's nothing to scoff at. But I mean, there's a lot of talented guys on his tail there too, with Hugo Gonzalez, Trey Johnson, Yegor Demine, Cooper's teammate at Montverde, Liam McNeely. Like there's a lot of talented guys in this draft. So, does he end up, being 6th? Does he push up a little bit? Does he fall toward the back end of the lottery or something? I think that's all still very much in play, like due to some of the, ups and downs and inconsistency things that I've seen over time. But I think ultimately when push comes to shove, like a guy who plays that hard, has that high of a defensive upside and those kind of tools to work with, yeah, I think he's a guy that teams are going to want to take a bet on.
Jon Chepkevich, dude, this was great. A lot of fun. We appreciate you joining us. Lots of Blue Devils to talk about. By my count, I think you have 4 Duke guys like right around the first round.
Yeah.
And then another couple in the early second round. I mean, wow, it's a lot of talent on this team coming up. Hope you get to Cameron and get to see a few games, man.
I'm hoping so. I'll have to hit you guys up if I make my way down. I appreciate you having me on the show. This was
Absolutely.
fun.
Thanks a lot for joining us. When we come back from the break, Donald and I will do a little bit of breaking down of Cooper Flagg's big scrimmage against Team USA. Stay with us.
This episode of the Duke Basketball Roundup is brought to you by BetterHelp.
We live in a completely online world, but that world makes it easy to think that people got it together and are living great lives. We only share the pieces of our lives that are fun and memorable and avoid posting about our pain. So it's easy to envy others who look like their life is full of the successes that we crave. And it's easy for us to avoid the things that get us down in life.
Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so that you can start living your best life. That's where BetterHelp can provide the assist. It's convenient and flexible, and all you need to do is just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched to a licensed therapist. And if you feel more comfortable with the switch, you can do that at any time.
So if you need help with focusing on how to live your best life, try BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/DukeBB. That's DUKEBB. Visit it today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/DukeBB.
Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp.
We're back from the break, Donald. Ordinarily, this would be the time where we sort of break down what we just heard from Jon Chepkevich. We're not going to bother with that. Great stuff.
Not because it wasn't great. Yeah, it was excellent stuff. And no notes from me. I feel like he explained a lot. And Jason, real quick, I do think that, the draft stocks that he did are very fair, and they do a good job over there. So it's all, it's funny. I was thinking about him saying Maluach being 6th. I'm like, that's a nice over under. right? For like
Yeah.
whether it be at the bottom end of the lottery or towards the top of the lottery. 6 is right in the middle of that. So it's a good shout.
Yeah. So I was going to say the reason we're not going to really get into it in more depth is that we need to talk about Cooper Flagg and what he did for the select team playing against Team USA. I want to start with this. I went ahead and watched. There's a video that's been posted online of the entire fourth quarter of the game. It was a very, very tight competitive contest. It was like a 1-point game almost throughout the entire quarter. At one point, Team USA pulls ahead by about 8 points. That's actually right when Cooper Flagg like hits a couple threes and stuff and gets Team USA back in it. He does not play the entire fourth quarter, by the way. He comes in, I think, for about the final like 5 or 6 minutes of that fourth quarter. I want to say, I think they may have only been playing like 8 or 10-minute quarters. I think maybe 10-minute quarters they were playing. It wasn't NBA length quarters, and it's worth noting the final score in the game was like 75-74. I think Team USA won, but it was in the 70s, which for an NBA game would be low. And one of the things again that I think was going on there was they weren't playing quite as long of quarters. So, but anyway, I watched the entire fourth quarter, and I just want to let people know some of the things I saw. The first one is Cooper Flagg was at times, not always, at times Cooper Flagg was playing point guard for the select team. Yeah.
Real quick, Jason, I think it's because I just want to clarify that they were 10-minute quarters.
Okay.
FIBA uses 10-minute quarters.
That makes perfect
sense on the
sense,
international
yes.
level. So so it's not a 12-minute quarter like you would see in the NBA.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, that makes perfect sense. But I was going to say, Cooper was bringing the ball up essentially as the point guard for the select team, not the whole time. And the select team has a number of really, really good point guards on their roster, guys who are NBA starters at that position. And I was just fascinated that this guy who people are like, is he a wing? Is he a forward? All this other kind of stuff. They trusted him enough to put the ball in his hands and bring it up the court against elite defenders. The first thing I noticed was he took a long jumper just inside the 3-point line, and he missed that shot. I hated it. It was contested. It was, I'm sure he's capable of making that shot, but man, 21 foot 3-point line, you're taking a 19, 20-foot shot. I don't like that from an efficiency standpoint. Next thing he did was he drove on LeBron James and took a really tough contested layup that sort of just spun out. I think he's probably making that shot over any college defender. LeBron James is a whole different ball of wax, but the fact that he was able to get where he needed to go to get downhill on LeBron and to get in there to take that tough layup that again spun out says a lot to me. After that, he trains at 3.
Jason, say that again. He went downhill on LeBron James.
Yeah,
I repeat, he went downhill on LeBron James. That is not something that NBA players do on a regular basis.
Exactly.
He was able to do it against, again, one of the greatest players of all time.
Next play from Cooper, he drains a 3 from the corner. He just looks incredibly comfortable taking that shot. The very next time down the floor, he almost got a steal on Devin Booker using his long arms, his quickness. Booker's making a pass, and suddenly Cooper's hands are just in the way, and he picks off the pass, but the referee blew the whistle. It wasn't for something Cooper did. I guess someone else committed a foul or something like that. But it denied Cooper what would have been. And by the way, he was already on his way taking it the other direction. I think he probably would have had a layup or a dunk out of the play, which would have been a huge highlight. But just it showed off those defensive instincts and quickness and his length. Devin Booker, not a guy who is in a habit of getting his passes picked off midair, but Cooper went ahead and did it, even though they called a foul. Next play, he drains a baseline jumper over Drew Holiday. It's worth mentioning Drew Holiday, I don't know if you want to say top 3 defender in the world, somewhere in that basic vicinity. I guess the other top defenders in the world are mostly big men. I think you can make a pretty good argument that right now, today, Drew Holiday is the best perimeter defender in all of professional basketball, all of basketball. And he was the one guarding Cooper Flagg, and Cooper Flagg just very calmly drains a baseline jumper right over him. Next play I saw, Cooper drove and he made a pass that I think could have been called an assist. Not entirely sure. His teammate sort of takes a dribble, makes a move. So maybe technically it's not a assist for Cooper. But what impressed me on the play was that he was able to penetrate the D again with Drew Holiday trying to guard him. Cooper created an opportunity for one of his teammates when he's doing that against college guys, I mean, come on. It is just absurd to think of his ability to make the guys around him better. Next play for Cooper, he drains a three-pointer over Anthony Davis's outstretched arm. He then immediately, people have probably seen this play. This is the play that's playing the most on Twitter and elsewhere. He then sort of helps break up a fast break, gets down court in time to get a tip in on an offensive rebound. He also gets fouled by Bam Adebayo. By the way, you don't get to see it in that clip, but he does miss the free throw that would have tied the game with about a minute 30 left. Big free throw that Cooper then misses. But that play is like the one that people are like, I mean, hitting a 3 over AD, breaking up a fast break at the other end, racing to the other end of the floor and getting the tip in and one on Bam Adebayo. If you are a opposing ACC coach or big man, you're watching that play and just being like, my God, what are we going to be up against? I do want to mention other things that didn't go right for him. Like the next time you see him, there about 30 seconds left or so, there's a rebound that's really a 50-50 rebound between him and Bam Adebayo in the post, and Bam gets the offensive rebound over Cooper. It was a huge moment, and if he'd gotten that rebound, then the select team would have had a chance to go down and take the lead. And because they didn't, the Team USA ends up making a three-pointer. It kind of puts the game a little bit out of range to some extent. But you know, I'm giving you warts and all on Cooper here. And then the very last play that I saw him make, again inside of 30 seconds left, there's a sort of mid-range jumper he takes. He kind of bodies Drew Holiday to the floor. He's able to slough him off. Drew falls down, and Cooper takes this mid-range jumper sort of off the glass. He misses it. But it looked like something that he was really comfortable doing, and it's probably a shot he makes a tremendous percentage of the time. It wasn't too, it wasn't far out. It was like maybe a 7 or 8 foot jumper, and because he's sloughed off Drew, he's taking it pretty much uncontested. My bet is that that's the shot he's going to hit, like I say, 60-70% of the time at least. So that's sort of a rundown of everything he did. I wanted to give folks warts and all. There's shots he missed. I mean, everyone sees the highlights of the shots he made, but the sort of narrative that, oh, Cooper led the select team back and Cooper was the guy that was sort of the best player on the select team. I watched that whole fourth quarter. That's true. That's just absolutely the case. Playing with NBA guys, good NBA players. Cooper Flagg looked like the best player on the floor for the select team.
Well, gigs up, Jason. Words out. Cooper Flagg's the real deal. We were trying to hide it as much as possible, but now he went to select camp and decided to, have rave reviews by everybody, including all the guys on USA basketball. So I guess it's done. I guess we can pack it up here. Cooper Flagg's the next coming of everything. No, I say this to Jess because we obviously knew that this is something that could happen, right? We knew that he would go. There's a reason why he was selected to the select team. It's not, again, there has been no college player that has been on this team since 2013. And technically there still hasn't, because he has not played a second in college. We keep repeating that. He is not yet. He theoretically should be a high school senior coming up this fall. Instead, he's going to be leading, helping Duke hopefully go to a national title. And when we look at all the stories and all the articles that are now coming out about his performance at this camp, this sets up a lot of expectations. We were talking just yesterday about how, some of those polls that may have us in 8, 9, 10 range, in the preseason polls, maybe those go up to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? Like, because people are going to see, hey, this guy is having all of USA basketball saying that this kid is the real deal, that he held his own and in fact sometimes starred in some of these scrimmages that they had, these practices. The best part about this, right, is not only did he get better by being taking part in this experience, but it helps USA basketball, right, as they prepare. The 75-74 score that we saw, it's indicative of some of the close games that could happen in the Olympics, and these guys need to be ready. They're not the dream team. No one's ever going to be a dream team. They're not planning to go here and beat every team by 70. They're going to have some close games. They're going to have some pivotal moments. And yeah, sure, he loses out on an offensive rebound to Bam Adebayo, but that's preparing Bam Adebayo for the intensity that he's going to need if he needs to make a late game offensive rebound in the Olympics, in the semifinal, in the gold medal match, whatever that may be. So I'm really happy that he was able to take in this experience. I'm really happy that he excelled at this experience, and hopefully it helps his confidence as we go along. Because Jason, as I reiterate, the team has said we're not going to do a lot of individual development drills during the summer. We're not going to do a lot of individual workouts. We're going to focus on how these team pieces come together. Well, he just had his big moment, right? As an individual workout, he just did that for 2 days. He got his experience. All these guys doing these little camps that we just talked about with Jon. I like that. I want more of it because I want these guys to continue to develop the competitive fire that they're going to need to hang this year in college basketball. And they're not going to do it necessarily by playing each other all summer. They're doing it by going out and playing other guys, seeing where they rank against those guys and saying, I'm better than him. I can beat him, and going out and actually doing it. And so Cooper's doing it with NBA guys, Sion James and the rest maybe doing it with college guys. But I like the fact that they're doing this because I think that is going to help this team when they come back together later on this month, really. In the next couple of weeks, they'll all be back, minus probably Khaman Maluach, who will be at the Olympics. All these guys getting these real world experiences outside of Duke is going to help them when they're at Duke. And I think that's really, I think is a great strategy for this team to be a part of these experiences and also thriving in them. And as we see, we just did a whole podcast about how many guys are doing so well at all these things. So that's always a good sign.
Exactly. I got two other quick Cooper notes from this NBA Select, Team USA Select team kind of practice thing. One is this, everyone after, as you mentioned, everyone's talking about him. The jig is up. Everyone knows about him. To me, the most telling quote, the most interesting quote was one from Jaime Jaquez of the Miami Heat, a guy who played at UCLA, was one of the best players in college basketball at UCLA, and made a Final Four. I mean, like, Duke knows what it takes to succeed on the biggest stage, and had one of the best rookie seasons in the NBA last year for Miami. Jaime Jaquez said about Cooper Flagg, he doesn't need the ball. He just finds a way to it, and the ball finds a way to him. That's something you can't teach. He's just got a great feel for the game. That is a dynamite quote, and it is part of sort of what you hear about this guy, that he impacts the game in a million different ways, and that, again, the ball, the gravity of him on the floor causes everything to rotate around him. The fact that a guy who's on his way to being NBA star, which I think Jaime Jaquez is, playing on a court with LeBron James and Jason Tatum and Kawhi Leonard and Drew Holiday and blah, 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 blah. The fact that guys are noting that about Cooper Flagg, it's almost unfathomable that he could be sort of that advanced in his feel and his gravity on the court. It's incredible to think about. And then go ahead. Go.
No, I think you're right. And I think the other thing that's different, right? A couple years ago, or I guess 3 years ago at this point, when Paolo Banchero was about to be a freshman at Duke, he was doing some of these similar workouts, right? He was with Team USA, not necessarily, I don't think he was on the select team, but he was like, doing stuff with USA basketball and doing these private workouts and going to some of the, the gyms that the NBA guys like to work out in on their own in the off season. And the word was trickling out that
the big thing was that he played in the Seattle Pro-Am.
Yes, he played Pro-Am, he played
full
like
of NBA
Drew
players.
League, that sort of thing, that sort of circuit. And the word out about them, again, was kind of private though, but it was like, hey, this kid can hold his own against these NBA guys, right? And he's in some places they're like, yo, not only is he holding his own, he's killing some of these NBA guys. This is more public than that was. That was more like guys on the grapevine kind of go, yeah, I heard about him. I heard he did well. This is people coming out right after a practice and going, that kid over there is a problem. So that just tells you how good it was that they can go out publicly and say, yeah, he beat us down in some ways. He was the star of this show. And so for a guy who, again, has not played a second in college, to steal the show from some of the best talent on this planet is an absolute dream to see.
All right, so my last thing, and then we're going to wrap it up here because we've been going on forever. I mentioned that I watched the entire fourth quarter of the game, and that includes the very final play. And I detailed for folks every play involving Cooper Flagg, good and bad. There's one play that I haven't detailed yet, which is the last play of the game. The select team is down 1 point. If they can score a bucket, they will beat the Team USA, essentially the latest edition of the Dream Team, which would be truly incredible. And Brandon Podziemski, I think I'm pronouncing his name right, plays for the Golden State Warriors, was a stud in college at Santa Clara, really, really good ball player, has the ball in his hands for the select team. And Cooper Flagg, again, this is the last play, there's like 10 seconds left or so. Cooper Flagg cuts through the lane. Drew Holiday is right there with him. And, Cooper kind of calls for the ball as he cuts through the lane, but Brandon Podziemski doesn't pass it to him, and Cooper moves through to the other side. And eventually the select team gets a kind of bad shot from Podziemski. He goes up for a shot with Anthony Davis on him. It's a weak looking shot, and Anthony Davis just slaps it away with ease. So as a result, and time runs out, the select team really never got a good shot to win it all. If you watch that play, as soon as it ends, as soon as the buzzer has sounded, the ball has gone out of bounds, the select team has lost, you can see Cooper Flagg on the other side of the court. Again, he rotated through the lane, called for the ball, and didn't get it. And you see him kind of shrug. He puts up his hands like, he looks at the bench. He's like, what happened there? Because he wanted that ball. He expected to get that ball. And with the best perimeter defender in the NBA guarding him, Cooper Flagg thought he was going to score and give them a win over LeBron James and Anthony Davis and Anthony Edwards and on Jason Tatum and on and on and on. That's what Cooper Flagg was expecting to happen on that play. And he shrugs. He's a little frustrated that that's not what ended up happening. That is the winner. That is his desire. That is his competitiveness. There's the other guys on the floor, by the way, are not like, shrugging or anything like that. Cooper Flagg is the one. And again, you visibly see it. And I don't think he's blaming anybody. I'm not sure that they'd drawn up some special play for him or anything like that. But he's a little frustrated because Cooper Flagg expects to win every damn time he walks on the floor.
What's the famous quote from the replacements? Winners want the ball with the game on the line. That's Cooper Flagg. And also, Jason, this is the first time we've heard this summer that his team lost something. Like, think about it. We've heard about him playing in pickup games and scrimmages all summer long so far.
It took LeBron James and
Drew Holiday and
Joel Embiid and Devin Booker and Jason Tatum. That's what
the great thing is. The great thing is, all those guys, their college eligibility has been washed for that. They're not coming to college, so we don't have to. He doesn't have to worry about them next year. But again, I like the response to it, and I also think it will fuel him. He's probably going to come back and he'll be like, we should have beat him, right? Like, he's going to have that in his mind as he continues these summer workouts. But yeah, winners want the ball when the game's on the line. Cooper Flagg's a winner.
Dude, is it November yet? Can we watch this guy play in a Duke uniform, please?
Yes, please.
I'm ready for
someone
it.
getting down there.
I'm ready for it right now. All right, with that, we wrap up episode 6. What is it, 637? I think it is. Yeah, 637 of the Duke Basketball Roundup. He's Donald. I'm Jason. This is the Duke Band. Playing us out, taking us home.